Hi guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. For those of you who are new here, my name is Grace and I'm a plantaholic. Today I want to talk about the Senecio rowleyanus, or the string of pearls, and how to care for these guys. One of my most asked questions on Instagram is how I've managed to grow this guy. So in today's video, I'm going to share all my tips and tricks on how to care for this string of pearls plant. For those of you who are time poor, I've sectioned off this video so you can skip ahead to relevant sections if you're after specific care requirements. So I've got here a variegated string of pearls that I've had for about a year now. And when I first got it, it was pretty much just up to here, but over the course of the year, it's grown all the way down to here. So if you're interested to learn about how I care for this string of pearls plant, then keep on watching. Before we dive into the care tips, I have to be honest and admit that I have killed my fair share of these guys when I first started out on my plant journey. I remember the very first one that I bought, and I didn't know much about this string of pearls at that point in time. I just thought it looked really cute with the little beads and wanted to give it a go. I kept it in a spot where it wasn't getting enough sunlight, and you guessed it, I overwatered it. So it quickly deteriorated, and suffice to say, I don't have it anymore. Since then, I've researched many different ways to keep these guys alive and tried again with replacements. I tried to hold back on watering but found that I was underwatering these guys. And then I tried bottom watering but found that the soil was getting waterlogged, and so on and so forth. I was about to give up, but then I thought I'm gonna give it one last go with this guy right here. Well, fast forward to today, I think I finally figured out the care requirements for these guys, and it's even started to flower for me, as you can see right here. So if my story sounds familiar to you, definitely don't give up. And with that said, let's jump right into the care tips. Tip number 1. These guys need bright and direct light and several hours of direct morning light even. The most important thing to note is that these guys need light on top of the pot where the roots are rather than on the ends. And that's really important if you want to keep the top part of the pot lush. For this plant, I tend to keep it on the balcony with access to bright light, and I take it away from the harsh afternoon sun to prevent it from burning. Tip number 2. Water. Now this can get a little bit tricky, but it always helps to remember the relationship between water and light. The more light a plant receives, the more water it should get. It's a direct correlation. So if you can't give this plant a lot of light, then reduce the watering to the appropriate amount. For this plant, because it receives quite a lot of light being on my balcony, I water it pretty frequently. Once a week in winter months and twice a week in warmer months, and I find that it works really well for this one. Tip number 3. Potting mix. The frequency of watering should also depend on the type of potting mix you're using. Now with these guys, because they're succulents, chunky, well-draining cacti mix would be preferable to ensure that the soil doesn't get waterlogged. And these string of pearls have quite a shallow root system, so they do tend to get root rot quite easily, and you want to be able to prevent that. So if you just bought one of these recently, I do recommend you check out the potting mix that it came in, just to make sure that it's well draining. And if it's not, then I would recommend repotting it into a well-draining potting mix, because that's going to really help you in the long run. Tip number 4. Pots. We talked about the potting mix, now let's talk about pots. Firstly, make sure that your string of pearls are in an appropriate sized pot, meaning that it's not too big for it, because if it is, then it increases the chances of it being overwatered. Secondly, the type of pot plays a role as well. If you have a heavy hand in watering, you might want to consider the terracotta pot, as it absorbs excess moisture and helps to prevent the soil from getting waterlogged. However, if you prefer the look of a ceramic pot, just make sure you're using a well-draining potting mix and that your plant is getting plenty of light. Tip number 5. Air circulation. Now I don't hear people talk about this one much, but that's the secret to this long, luscious string of pearls that you see here. For the longest time, I kept my string of pearls indoors where the airflow is stagnant and never had much success. However, ever since I moved these guys to the balcony, the constant breeze and air circulation really help to evaporate any excess moisture in the soil and helps to ensure that the pearls aren't sitting in water at the base. I found that that's really key in preventing rotting pearls, and this string of pearls really love it. If you look at the base, It's really lush and full, and it's constantly putting out new growth from the top. If you do prefer to keep these indoors, then I would recommend using a fan to help with air circulation. Tip number 6, pearls above the pot. Another tip that's really important is to ensure the pearls at the base are near the top of the pot, meaning that it isn't potted too deep inside. Like I mentioned earlier, air circulation is really important, and so if the pearls are planted too deep inside, it's difficult to achieve aeration and makes it more prone to rotting. So make sure to have your pearls sitting higher above the sides of the pot. Tip number 7, temperature. The thing to note about these string of pearls is that they're not frost tolerant. So if you live in a climate where temperatures go sub-zero and it gets icy, then be sure to bring your pearls indoors in the winter. Otherwise, if you live in the tropics or in a moderate climate like me in Sydney, then you don't have to worry too much about temperatures. Tip number 8, propagate. My last tip to you is to propagate when you get a chance. If there's one thing that I've learned from Plantarina here on YouTube is that you need to get plenty insurance. I always regretted throwing away my struggling string of pearls in the past, as I could have propagated them instead and grown a whole new plant. And these guys are relatively easy to propagate. You can do that in soil or in water. But I won't get into that in this video, as I am planning on a propagation video, so stay tuned for that. So that's all for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed and found it helpful. If you did, please give it a like, leave me a comment, and consider subscribing if you want to see more content from me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!